we talk a lot about self-love and really working on that and working on yourself as a person. And we talk about self-full instead of selfishness, but, and I know this is the same message. You just have you have your own way of
Yeah.
talking about that. So,
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's like with the relationship stuff I talk about, like if your expectation is that the person's going to yell at you for what you're about to say, you're probably not going to say it in a way that doesn't elicit a yell. Like you're going to go into it afraid, you're going to hold back. My wife and I are going through that right now. Like there's something I know, like she's not going to want to hear. In the past, she's not been supportive when I've brought stuff like this to her.
mhm.
And so I go into it, like she told me, she's like, you're being really weird. And I'm like, yeah, I am. You're right. And it's because I'm afraid of how you might react. She's like, you're not even giving me a chance to react better. You've like preemptively set me up to not react well because you're being really weird about it. And it was
Yeah,
like,
good point.
yeah. So, we go into anything like that. So if I'm going into like, I was just telling someone uh, like, we're all, up on the weekend, like, family time, whatever. And I wanted to go ride my bike trainer in the garage, even though it's super cold out. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I wanted to. And in the past, if I did something like that, I'd be like, oh, this is really good. Like that's me time. And I wake up really early for my workouts so that I'm not taking away from family time. And how dare I do that? And what's she going to think? Is this going to impact her? Is she going to be mad for me? And I'm going into it with all those feelings. And so I'm like really weird about it and kind of sneaky and be like, oh, I'm just going to go into the garage for a minute. It's like, what? Why are you dressed like that? Why are you wearing spandex? And like, which is a different problem. But then it's like, I'm just going to go ride in the garage for a half an hour. She's like, why are you doing that? Because then it's like, I'm being really sneaky about it. And it's like, you didn't tell me that. And now I'm stuck because you didn't like, I was going to go do something, but now I can't. Versus like, hey, I was thinking about riding on my trainer for 30 minutes. Are you cool with that? Is there a time that works well? Yeah. Why don't you do it at this time? Cool. But instead
Yeah.
I'm like sneaking around. I'm afraid. So I set myself up. And I just said to someone, I was like, yeah, I've been doing this every weekend now, Saturdays and Sundays. And it's like, she's not even phased in the slightest about it. She and my son will make fun of what I'm wearing. That's about it. And then I walk back in and they're like, oh, block your eyes. But it's not like, how dare you? And so it was very selfish because I've made it this more emotional thing. It's like I say with food, like food wasn't just for sustenance. It was filling this emotional hole.
Mhm.
So like it had so much more power over me versus now, like I just eat because I have to eat at some point during the day to fuel my body.
Right.
And it doesn't have any power over me. But I made these little acts of me time matter in a negative way because I was being like sneaky because I was afraid of, and I wasn't doing it consciously, but I was afraid of how they'd be perceived. And I just set them up to be perceived that way.
Yeah, it's kind of like this, we talk sometimes about the stories that we tell ourselves. We get this movie reel of how things maybe have gone in the past. Maybe they haven't. Maybe you just have this expectation of how you think it's going to go
Yeah.
or how you think they might react. And that creates it can create a whole movie in your head about what's going to happen and how
Yeah.
she's going to react. And you don't even, like you said, you don't give them the opportunity to
Right.
rise to the occasion and say, yeah, go take some me time.
Yeah.
We don't care. We'll see you in 30, whatever.
Yeah. No, and I mean, so not to shamelessly segue into my new book,
Yeah,
but
let's do it. It's
no, but like
time.
that, that point actually that's a big piece of it is giving them the opportunity to react differently. So the
Mhm.
concept of the book is all about in our relationships, like we own our half, they own theirs. And the problem with that notion that it stops there is that we feel really powerless. So we feel like they're doing this to me, they're treating me this way, they don't love me enough. What if they could just value me, love me, see me for who I am, stop like mistrusting me, whatever the what ifs and the whys are, and just love me or just accept me or be a better boss to me or value my contribution to the company or whatever the relationship situation is. But it's not 50-50 because actually half of what's going on inside of them is a response to us, just like half of what's going on inside of us is a response to them. Like we have our actions that we proactively put out there, but that's only half of us. The other half of us is how we respond to the world. And that dynamic exists in them. Only the world is us, which sounds super egotistical. But like in that context, we are the thing they're reacting to. So when I am like sneaking around in like looking like a ninja because I'm head to toe in tight clothes, I'm asking my wife to think something fishy's going on,
Sure.
versus just giving her a version of me that's open and honest and is a partner. Is like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Is that cool? Does that get in your way at all? When would be a good time for that? And, just giving her a chance to work with an equal and not someone who's like kind of without noticing it slips out the back door.
Yeah,
Which
kind
makes me
of
sound worse than I am.
almost kind of trying to manipulate the situation in some way, even though it doesn't require manipulation.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
almost like you're manipulating it by not manipulating it. Like, just give them a version of yourself that's honest and caring. And actually, the place that I talk about
Mhm.
coming from is understanding the happiness that they're seeking.
I love
And
this concept.
cool.
Go deep there.
So
Go deep there.
yeah. So the idea, and it comes from Buddhism. So I did not think this up, but the idea is ultimately all of us just seeks to be happy. And so often we lose sight of that in each other, and we think that the other person just seeks to make us miserable. And actually, like, that may be happening as a result of what they're doing. And maybe they don't understand their happiness, or they're choosing to go about it in a way that's harmful and not even helping them. But actually, like, when we get up in the morning, we're not like, oh, you know what today I'd like to do? I'd like to just make them cry. That'd be great. No, there's something that that person wants, and they happen to think that you're in the way. And even if they do get up and they're like, I want to make them cry, or I want to hurt them, the reason for that, and they may not understand this, but the reason for that comes from their desire to deal with some pain they're feeling. And they
Exactly.
think this is a confusion, but they think that hurting you will take away their pain. And you know what? In the moment, it may do that. Just like I did with food, I thought that food would fill that hole, that emotional hole I had for feeling stability and feeling comfort. And it did in the moment. But then 5 minutes later, I'm empty again. Raising a hand or screaming at you may make them feel powerful in that moment. But 5 minutes later, they're back to that time when they were a little child and they were being abused or mistreated or felt powerless and scared. And so it's not that they just wanted to hurt you. There's a hurt inside of them that they're not able to get in touch with. And so they're lashing out because they think it will help them, whether
Sure.
it's a hit of a drug or a drink or a hit of a person. And I'm not saying any of these things is okay. And I'm not saying that you should stick around and be absorbing all that stuff. But
Certainly not.
it's not just to hurt you in and of itself. There is an underlying thing that they need that they may not even be aware of. And so the question is, how do you tap into that? And obviously there's different extremes here. And in some of them, you don't tap into it. You tap into a way to leave safely for yourself. But if it's not a situation where your life is in jeopardy, or your well-being is in jeopardy, or there isn't true mental illness afoot, what can you do to get in touch with what they actually want to achieve so that you can both coexist, getting closer to your happiness rather than working against it or sneaking around? So give them a version of you that shows them like, oh, this person actually is not working against me, so maybe I shouldn't work against them. And it almost happens subconsciously for them. You stop fighting them, they will stop fighting you. You give them a better version of you, it will change the dynamic between you, and you will spark a different version of them.
It's true. And you started off by talking about, it's half one person, half the other person, everybody 50-50. And there's an interesting, maybe you talk about this in your book. If so, feel free to elaborate, but it's an interesting concept because nobody's percentages are ever the same.
Yeah.
She might think, well, we're equal, we're both at fault. And I'm like, no, you're about 90% at fault. I barely did anything wrong at all.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be how the other person's thinking, but
Yeah.
one of the things
Pat, that's always how the other person's thinking.
Yeah, it really is.
Unless it's 0-100.
One of the most effective
Exactly.
ways,
Which I think is actually more what happens in relationships, right? It's all your fault.
Yeah.
Is it? Nope. It can't be just one person's fault.
but
Yeah.
and in my opinion, one of the most effective ways to handle that is, and it takes coming from you got to get yourself into the place first, because you can't have emotion or it won't work. But if I look at it and I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on with her. I feel okay. I did one tiny thing wrong. I didn't pick up my underwear, and she absolutely, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'll just apologize 100% for the piece that I know, no matter how big or small it is. I'm sorry that I did this and that it upset you. And almost every single time, at least with Sam and with my kids and with people close to me, they'll look at it and then immediately be their guard goes down and they're like, well, yeah, it really probably wasn't that upset me so much, or I don't know. it kind of diffuses the entire situation at that point. So even if you do only have a small perceived part in it, if you just own that 100%, whatever your part is, it almost always ends better, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of giving them a different version of you to react to.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's not about your underwear on the ground. I mean, depending how bad your underwear is.
Yeah.
But it's, I'll just call that out. But what it's about is like, that's not what the need is. The need is not as simple as just like, I have a need to, my happiness is to not have underwear on the ground. No, it's like, I have felt overwhelmed in life. And one of the things that helps me feel better is having a clear, clean living space.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I see things like this, it immediately triggers that response for me. And so then I go into this mode where I'm sort of, mindlessly lashing out. And then you're receiving that. You're like, oh my God, it's just a pair of underpants. What is wrong with you? And then we start arguing over that when actually that has nothing to do with the real issue.
Exactly.
And so when you get into that, like, I'm sorry, I should have picked them up. If it diffuses the person, I think that's a great opportunity to try to dig into why that's so upsetting.
Sure.
So say like, I'm really sorry about that. You're right. Like I shouldn't have done that and I will do better in the future. Can I talk to you about it some more? Yeah. What I want to understand is like, obviously it's not great that I did that, but I feel like there's something more to it than that. Can you talk to me about that? Why does it matter to you in the way that it does? Yeah. So I can understand better, not just about the underwear, but more broadly, how I can do better with that. And kind of draw that person out to talk about the happiness that they're looking for.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like you're really investigating what happiness they're seeking that you're, ruffling the feathers of.
And it's also a great way as a partner to help somebody, through something. Like, I don't know. Yeah. It's like, I'm sorry that I didn't put the fork in the dishwasher, but you just really screamed at me loud there. And there's got to be something else bothering you. So why don't we just talk about that?
Yeah.
I mean, that might be the wrong way to go about saying it. I'm sure there's a softer way to say it, but we kind of have.
But that intention, it's what I mean. That's what you're trying to get to is like, of course I can do better with that. I feel like there's more to it though, and I want to make sure that I'm respecting what it is you really care about.
Mm-hmm.
So talk. And the thing is like, this all sounds great, but when you're being attacked, can you really like stop and be like, oh, I'm so sorry, and tell me about your feelings? But this is the thing is when you can look at it less of that person is just coming here to attack me, then it usually helps you disarm a bit and step down and not need to be defensive and reacting that way and let you take the high road. And that's kind of the point is like seeing that if you appreciate your ability to influence a better outcome by giving them a different version of you to react to, then it's worth you stepping back your need to react blindly and equally or worse to how they're reacting, because that's not going to solve anything. You're just going to go ahead.
I didn't know you were
well, it's whatever you I was going to say whatever Pat's going to say is probably better. It's just like, if you're just coming down, I hate the word just, it's like an instant signal that what you're about to say is bad. If you just dismiss them or snap at them or judge them or hit back, you can't possibly imagine that the response you're going to get to that will be positive in the same way that yours wasn't.
Right.
So
exactly.
If that's really what you want in life, good for you, but no one really does. Right. You probably want the fighting to come down. And this isn't like, we're talking about, spouses, because it's the context for the show. Like with your boss, you're going to go head to head with them over and over again. Your kids, like you want to drive them out of the house so that they go to their friend's house and like do stuff that you wish they weren't doing that would just make you want to yell at them more. Like you have to look at what is it you're actually trying to achieve, like your own happiness seeking. So if what you care about is not to go toe to toe with them, which I guarantee you it isn't, maybe on the surface, but not under the surface, then think about what would get me to that. Sure. So you can be self-full for a moment. And it's like, you may see that you kind of both want the same thing. Nobody wants to be fighting and walking on eggshells for 5 days and just kind of, it happened long enough in the past and now we'll just be normal again, but we haven't actually dealt with the problem. So it's going to happen again. Like that's not how anybody wants to live. That's how I think an overwhelming number, maybe not a majority, but a huge number of marriages operate. It's just like,
we concur.
There's a, and it takes a minute. So when somebody comes at you, like we're talking about, for me, that you have to let your guard down, because as soon as you throw your guard up and you come right back at them, then you've given them an actual reason to now be mad at you, and they might not have been in the beginning. It might have been something else completely. So, and our kids are really good at that, by the way. But for me, I think if I can get myself to the point where I remember, and it only takes a minute, sometimes I got to breathe, sometimes I just got to not say anything for a minute and think about it, but where I remember that all anger is a manifestation of fear or hurt, right?
Yeah.
It's anger isn't real. It's they're either something scared the crap out of somebody, like somebody cuts you off on the highway and you're like, you son of a, well, he scared you. That's where it came from, right? And then it's scared, and then the other one is
fear, I think.
Yeah.
Well, the other one's hurt. Like somebody's hurting on the inside, and sometimes they just lash out at somebody because they're in pain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, if you can get to that point, you're like, wow, they're either scared or afraid, and then you kind of want to help them more than poke them.
Yeah. And how are you going to feel that level of care and compassion when you're too busy feeling attacked?
Sure.
So you have to disarm yourself to be able to disarm them. And that's really that's so much of what the book is about, is trying to help people see past that initial reaction so that they can react differently. Because then you get in this virtuous cycle instead of a vicious cycle.